This concludes my World War II section of the museum. If you'd like to come with me, I'd be happy to start with the American Revolution and Civil War and move forward in time from there. Sound good?
Yes, that sounds great.
We don't have a whole lot from the American Revolution because American Revolution stuff is pretty rare. I have a wood canteen in the display case there and a few other pieces. My favorite piece is one of the most historical metal groupings I've ever owned. And it's a 3-generational family grouping from Providence, starting in Providence, Rhode Island. And the gentleman's name that was in the American Revolution was Captain Stephen Olney from North Providence, Rhode Island. So all of these Revolutionary War veterans medals are attributed to him. So Captain Olney had 3 main claims to fame during the American Revolution. Number 1, he fought in all the major battles from Lexington and Concord pretty much until the end of the war. Number 2, he saved the life of future President James Monroe in the battlefield. And number 3, he was the last officer documented case of using a spittoon in combat, and that would have been at Yorktown. So a spittoon is an officer's spear with like a halberd on the end. So General Lafayette ordered him to have his men fix bayonets, but to not load their muskets and to charge the redoubt, which was like a trench that the British were in. It was breakfast time. He countermanded that order, and he told his men to load their muskets anyway, which was in violation of Lafayette's order, but that's what he did. He jumped over the redoubt onto a table where some British officers were eating breakfast, and he had his spittoon and his sword. As he was battling it out with them, he wound up his spittoon was in pieces. The wood was shattered. He was disemboweled. His intestines were hanging out. And basically, he was about to be killed by the British officers. Just at that time, his men had jumped over the redoubt, and they fired. And the British officers either were killed or fled. He then went back to the battalion surgeon. The battalion surgeon said, sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do for you. You got a day or two. I'll try to make you as comfortable as I can. And 3-4 weeks later, he was back in command of his company, went back to Providence, Rhode Island, lived to be 80-some years old, and is buried. You can still see his house and his grave in a park in North Providence, Rhode Island, which my wife and I did. This is all the history of research on his metal grouping. So this all came from the family. So then his son didn't do anything significant military-wise, but his grandson did. His grandson served in the American Civil War, and he was a private, a corporal, a sergeant major, and a second lieutenant. So he was wounded twice during the Civil War in most of the major battles from Antietam to Gettysburg to the signing of the peace at the end between Grant and Lee. So his Civil War numbered 3-digit NO numbered traceable medal is in the grouping. He got out of the military. Then he joined the Army again and served in the Indian War. His NO numbered traceable Indian War medal is in the grouping. Then he became a major and was the executive officer of a colored regiment in the Spanish-American War. And his commanding officer wasn't around, and he took command of the regiment. And when Teddy Roosevelt went up San Juan Hill, he went up the hill next to it with his colored troops as the acting regimental commander, as a major. Well, because they were colored troops, they didn't get the credit that they should have at the time. But basically, they did the same thing that the Rough Riders did at the Battle of San Juan Hill in Puerto Rico, Battle of San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War. So his Spanish-American War medal, which is numbered and traceable to him, is there. Then he was promoted to colonel and brigadier general, and upon his retirement, he was promoted to major general as a tombstone rank, and he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery outside of Washington, D.C. His son was a lieutenant colonel in World War I and is buried next to him. So it's 3 generations of military men from this family, and it's in an early Burley Banks and Biddle case. I believe his medals are so early because he was a high-ranking officer at the time, being a brigadier general, and he was awarded his medals right away as soon as the medals came out in the early 1900s. Both medals boxes are Burley, Banks, and Biddle marked, and they are engraved to the general. Then I have some swords from the 1820s, 30s, 40s, Mexican War period. This is from the Mexican War period. I collect infantry items. So when you look at my Civil War shoulder boards, you see ranks for the infantry officer from second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, brigadier, and two-star general. Then this is another, this uniform wasn't his, but it's one of original things that I put together to look like his. This gentleman here was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he didn't like the pay that Wisconsin gave. So he decided to go to Michigan and join the 22nd Michigan. So here's his original commission document from the state of Michigan. This is pictures of him at different periods in life. Here's his sword belt. Here's a picture of him in uniform. Then you have all of his GAR pieces after the war from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then you have two swords here. One sword was the sword that he carried with him during the Civil War. The other sword was presented to him by his men. He was sick. So not too long before the battle in Tennessee that the 22nd Michigan is known for, basically at Chickamauga, he wound up getting out on a medical. So all these men in his unit here went in and they chipped in $1 to buy him a presentation sword. Well, half of these men were either killed or wounded at the Battle of Chickamauga. And this is, I had one of my researchers research all of these guys. I can tell you exactly what happened to every one of the guys that signed that letter there.
Oh, wow.
So some of them became prisoners of the Confederates, some of them were killed, and very few survived to be old men. Let's put it that way. These are from the Spanish-American War. This is the 1st Regiment from Wisconsin, a captain of infantry. This is an enlisted man wearing the summer tropical uniform. This is a very important grouping here. This guy was in the Spanish-American War as an enlisted man. And so all of his medals are numbered and traceable to him. Then when the Purple Heart came out in 1932, he was one of the first ones to get a Purple Heart. It's a 3-digit number, 200 and something, Purple Heart that he got. He also got an early Burley, Banks, and Biddle Silver Star for capturing that Morro battle flag, which is on the wall over there. That's what he got the Silver Star for during the Battle of Manila Bay. Then we have some assorted weapons from the Civil War and the Spanish-American War. Pistols and rifles, cartridge belts. This is a Civil War Medal of Honor. That's one of the ones that was rescinded. That was from the 27th Maine. So a general said, anyone whose unit volunteers to re-enlist, we're going to give them all the Medal of Honor, and he did. Later on, it was thought that it wasn't appropriate use of the medal, so the awards were rescinded by the government, but a lot of men and their families chose not to give them back, and that is one of those. All right, now we're going to go to World War I. This is the uniform for the master engineer that became the master engineer for the city of Janesville, Wisconsin, after he came home from World War I. It's very interesting. You'll note the Bullion Master Engineer patch on this side, something you just don't see very often. This is one of my favorite pieces in the museum. This cap was worn by one of my customers who was training to become a pilot in World War I, Elver R. Oscar from Stoughton, Wisconsin. He was a personal friend of Henry Ford and had the Ford garage in the Stoughton area. And this hat is named to him on the inside. I will show you. November 1918, it's dated. Elver R. Oscar November 10th, 1918, one day before the armistice was signed. So he had 250 men in his unit in Chicago. They were training to be pilots. They came in and said, hey, the war's over. You can either stay and finish your flight school or you can go home. He said of the 250 men, one stayed, everyone else went home. This was also his, and the white band on the cap denotes aviation cadet. That was also Elver Oscar's campaign hat in World War I. He never left Chicago. Then for World War I, as before, I collect 32nd Division from Wisconsin and Michigan. So these are all 32nd Division helmets from World War I. This one has his unit on the top, the 128th Infantry, 32nd Division. I also have the gas mask from the same veteran here. He was from the Janesville, Wisconsin area. This is one of my favorite pieces. It's a captain's helmet with the 32nd Division patch on it, and it's got a battle scene period painted on the helmet. I collect World War I victory medals by the bars that are on the medal. So I try to get all the variations for Army victory medals from World War I. 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, 4 bar, 5 bars, and all the different possibilities of bars. In the case, you'll also find a Craig rifle from the Spanish-American War and a very rare Canadian Ross rifle from the World War I time frame. Over here, this is all World War I 32nd Division items. From an officer's overcoat, a lieutenant's overcoat with the 32nd Division patch on, to gas mask, canteen cover, sun in service with the 32nd and the red arrow, all 32nd Division. Some from my hometown, some not. This piece here is very interesting. This was a man that was awarded a Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest medal for serving in World War I. This is his citation signed by General Pershing, and then here are his period medals. This is an unusual piece that one of my pickers in the area picked up. This is a German medal for serving in the China Relief Expedition. This gentleman wound up settling in Milwaukee and was in the German Navy during the China Relief Expedition, and this medal recently came from the family of the veteran. Very, very rare piece. Over here, we have some further World War I things. On the top here are assorted hats from World War I, some Steins with the lithographed panes in the bottom. And then here we have some US and German items in the case, a sawback bayonet, a matching Luger with 2 matching magazines and a holster. We have an artillery Luger that was captured by a 32nd Division veteran, a broom handle, a trench knife, a hate belt. All these things, many of these things actually, were brought home by Wisconsin veterans. Not all of them, but some of them. Here we have an infantry captain. We have an enlisted man here with a painted 32nd Division helmet and gas mask. And here we have a World War I enlisted overcoat. And then all of these posters are original lithograph prints from the World War I time frame. And out of all the ones I've owned over the years, these were the ones that were of the most interest to me, that I liked the most. So unfortunately, I could not put one of all of them that exist in the museum, or I would simply have a poster museum. Mm-hmm. Over here, I have a German infantry officer's tunic from the 102nd Infantry Regiment. And this guy was from Wisconsin, from the Door County area, and he was in the military district of Paris after the war. This is all of his stuff. Notice the British-made hat. Here's a picture of him with his dog tags. This came out of the woodwork this last summer in Wisconsin. This here is very unique. A friend of mine Bill Scott had a shop in Milwaukee in the 80s and 90s. And all of these German badges, see a Junker gold wound badge with the original envelope, the silver, the bronze, all of this stuff was brought back by a World War I veteran, and he brought these things back in quantity, must have got into a supply point, and sold them to my friend when he had a store. Well, a year or two ago, one of the guys he sold some stuff to 30 years ago sold them back to him, and it has a dog tag from the U.S. soldier that brought all these back from World War I, who was from Wisconsin. I also collect World War I infantry shoulder boards and things that go with it. Like I have some cutout wound badges here. Some German items from World War I, the brown leather ammo pouches, gas mask with the carrier. Then this is the gunner's helmet plate, which is rather rare. For the Korean War, we have a combat medic from Milwaukee who received 2 Purple Hearts with his Western Union telegram to his family saying he was wounded and his medals. And we have an infantryman from Racine, complete with all of his documents and paperwork. And we have a 8th Squadron 49th Fighter Group flag from the occupation of Japan. And we have a Korean War flag. And then we start Vietnam. And these are original combat photographer pictures from an Air Force photographer from Janesville, Wisconsin. These are some original unpublished pictures that he took. Here's a flag from South Vietnam. This is the gentleman that I was talking about from Janesville. He not only was he on the ground, but he also did missions in the air on both fixed wing and jet aircraft, taking official Air Force photographs during the Vietnam War. If you go around to the case, we have his original camera that he used, and his fighting knife, his patches off his flight suit, his ID card, all from the same veteran. Also in the case, we have my M14 sniper rifle and my SP-1 civilian sport rifle from the Vietnam period, an RPG-2 with rocket deactivated, of course, and one of my favorites, a tour jacket. And I think that's significant, at least for me, because it's dated 1970-71, and I was born in 1970. We also have a very early Green Beret from a veteran who was in World War II, Korea and Vietnam. And he was a captain in Vietnam who was from northern Wisconsin. And this particular piece is identified to him with his name inside. I have lots of research and paperwork that goes with that. If you look them up online, there's a lot of stuff out there. Here we have an OPLP, a listening post observation post, with a dummy 60 caliber machine gun. Behind him is a major jungle fatigues where the insignia are directly embroidered into the jungle fatigue. We have an NVA soldier, and I have a Vietnam VC black pajamas set, but due to all the delay in shipping and everything, I just got this mannequin in here, and we haven't had a chance because we've been getting so many collections in. I haven't had a chance to dress this mannequin, but he will be a VC black pajamas fighter as soon as we get a chance to put them together. Then I have a Vietnam, if you come over here, you can see an original chaplain's kit with all of the accessories that go with it for a chaplain serving in the field in Vietnam. From the chaplain stow to the hymn book, everything that a chaplain would need to give services and meet the religious needs of the soldiers in the field. Here's one of my favorite pieces. This is one of those 40 feet tablecloth with 99 gold bullion eagles on it, French made, and this is all stuff from Saddam Hussein's palaces. Okay. Yeah, well, this guy here, he and I traded uniforms. I only had 4 uniforms with me, so this was towards the end of the war. See a Junker gold wound badge with the original envelope, the silver, the bronze. All of this stuff was brought back by a World War I veteran. Pistols and rifles, cartridge belts. This is a Civil War Medal of Honor.